President Trump, or former President Trump, just got the news about his Facebook ban. Let me tell you some of the specifics from that. This is from CNBC. Facebook on Friday announced that it may allow former President Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts to be reinstated in January 2023. At that time, the social media company will reevaluate whether the risk to public safety of allowing Trump back onto its service has receded. This 2-year suspension will prevent Trump from using Facebook or Instagram to broadcast his followers until after the 2022 U.S. midterm elections. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff to say in reaction to this. First of all, this would be right in time for the 2024 presidential race. So it is a curious thing. If the whole idea was to try to quell the Democratic fears of Trump, that's not going to do it because he might want to run for president in 2024, and the unban will allow him to use their platform. Now, we don't know if it's just like, oh, I'm going to reevaluate, or I should be clear, I don't know if they mean we'll reevaluate it in 2 years, or if they mean like, no, he's back in 2 years. I'm not sure. Well, actually, they say may allow former President Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts to be reinstated in January 2023. The word may is in there, so I guess they'll reevaluate it at the time. But, yeah, my feelings on this are probably not too popular, but everybody knows my regular spiel on this if you listen to the show on a regular basis. I don't even think I agree with having some sort of advisory council of experts to try to determine who gets banned and who doesn't get banned, because effectively you're leaving up the decision as to who gets to speak and who doesn't get to speak to an unelected board that's basically picked by Silicon Valley oligarch billionaires. And they get to police the discourse. They get to control the discourse. And the fact of the matter is, if they can ban Trump, they can ban literally anybody for any reason. Now, to be fair, they said the Ministry of Truth, as we'll call it, they said, hey, the way that Facebook banned Trump is actually not okay because they didn't have clear standards and guidelines, and they didn't have very specific rules that they were enforcing. So it was very like, we just have the feeling that he did something wrong, and so we're going to ban him indefinitely at the time. And they criticized that, and they said, you can't just ban him indefinitely because that's effectively like the internet death penalty, and that may be overkill for the type of thought crime that Trump engaged in. So they were critical of what Zuckerberg did, and they did say you need clear rules and standards and time frames for punishments. So they are a little better, in my estimation, than Zuckerberg, but I still just don't like the idea of having some sort of Ministry of Truth. Because the original idea of Facebook and other social media outlets was like this. Your phone provider. So you have a phone provider. Has there been phone calls made using AT&T or whoever, fill in the blank, where somebody's committing a crime and one person's talking to another person and they're orchestrating the crime over the phone? That's absolutely happened. Now, does anybody look at that and say, oh, you have to ban those people from ever using the phone? Nobody even thinks of that. They're like, what are you talking about? Because they just don't think of a phone provider as being legally allowed or able to micromanage and nitpick who can and can't use the service and who's allowed to talk and who's not. It just doesn't enter people's mind. So in other words, people used to think of Facebook and social media like that, and now they think of it in a totally different way, where they want censorship and deplatforming and filtering, and in my opinion, it's just a category error. People are just thinking about it like it's something that it shouldn't be. And ultimately, I think everybody's come to despise the world where they do have this Ministry of Truth, and they do have an oversight board that determines who can and can't talk, because even though if you like the target now, there's going to come a time where you don't like the target, and you're going to be like, this is fucking bullshit. This is not okay. And we've given the million examples before. Everybody on the left who was cheering banning far-right figures from Twitter, well, it turns out they turned around and banned Antifa as well. Congratulations. Now, even if you hear that and say, I don't know, that might be legit to me, well, then look at Reddit, and they banned Reddit the Donald, but then they also turned around and banned Chapo Trap House. So, it's always going to come back to bite you in the ass regardless of what your ideology is, because anybody who is out of favor with the powers that be will be punished. And, I don't think there's a way to enforce it properly. So in the case of Donald Trump, listen, this is an unpopular opinion, I'll admit that, but I think it's the correct opinion. When there was the attempted insurrection, the riot on January 6th, Trump spoke out of both sides of his mouth. So on the one hand, he was like, I love you. You guys are all very special people. This election's being stolen and somebody needs to do something about it. So he was very clearly egging it on. He said in the speech beforehand, like, we need to go to the Capitol. But then he also said, all right, everybody, you're very special people, but I need you to go home. We're seeing what's happening on TV. We believe in peace. We support our boys in blue. So make sure you do the right thing and you go home. So since he spoke out of both sides of his mouth, yes, there is enough cover there where I think he could have said, this is bullshit. You can't punish me for egging on the insurrection when half of my commentary was the opposite of egging on the insurrection. Now, again, was his intent the stuff that's like, hey, go home? No, I think he was kind of forced to do that part by his staff, but he did do that part. But yeah, in his heart of hearts, he maybe wanted to be like, yes, like, let's take over the White House and keep me president. But from the beginning, I think it was doomed because, as I said before, there was nobody in high positions of power at the Pentagon or whatever who were, ready to carry out the orders. Like the Oath Keepers, so like militias were ready to help Trump, but regular, people who are already in positions of power were not going to go along with this. And Mike Pence wouldn't even go along with it. So anyway, we don't need to, rehash the events of January 6th. But the fact of the matter is, this is weird to me. This is weird that everybody wants Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all these various outlets to like ban people and have the ability to ban people and, to open that door. Because, again, I think the solution to a lot of this stuff is very simple. It's you regulate all these big social media companies like they're public utilities. And you basically expand First Amendment protections to these platforms. Now, people hear that and they think, oh my God, that's free speech anarchy or whatever. No, it's really not, because it's still illegal to do direct threats of violence, for example. It's still illegal to do targeted harassment. It should be illegal in the tech age to do doxing. So, like, there are still rules, but the rules are just the same rules that we have under the law, under the Constitution of the United States of America. And if those rules are violated, yeah, there should be an open, transparent judicial process where correct action is taken. So it's not free speech anarchy or whatever, but it's just the most reasonable standard I can think of, which is you lean as heavily on the side of free speech as possible, but still you're reasonable enough to understand that you don't have a right to dox and you don't have a right to targeted harassment and you don't have a right to direct threats of violence. So anyway, that's my view on it. I really think we're in this dystopian age now where this stuff is only going to ramp up. And we don't really have free speech if a corporation can take it away in the same kind of way that a government would. We don't really have free speech. If the public square is the social media platforms and you're banned from them, then you are sort of banned from free speech. You can go talk on a soapbox on the corner, but nobody's going to fucking listen. So you're talking to yourself. So I think most people will come to regret this path we're going down. But unfortunately, I think everybody's mind is made up and nothing I can say or do will change their minds.